Were sauropods constantly migrating in search of food? Hey everyone, Mike here with Prehistoric Magazine. Another one of those questions that I find fascinating. Hope you guys find this interesting. But again, difficult to pinpoint down to exacts, and in preparation for this video, I did a little bit of reading on elephants and just how far they go in search of water and food. And some elephants have been known to migrate up to 300 and I think it's like 360 miles a year, in search of food, in search of water. So it can be like 30 to 35 miles a day. And I guess I'm wondering from you all out there, hopefully we can come together on this in that comment section down below, but do we think that sauropods migrated great distances as well? Now, again, in doing research for this, it is believed that sauropods migrated great distances, but not all of them did that. So, again, difficult to ascertain these questions with only static bones, dusty bones to go off of. But again, not to beat a dead horse, but that's why that comment section is so important down there. I really hope you'll chime in. But, what do we think about, sauropods migrating great distances during times of drought? It seems to be that when there are stresses on the environment and stresses on the animal, like an elephant, then that causes them to have some reaction, which is migrating, migrating in search of water, crossing deserts. We kind of saw that in Prehistoric Planet Season 2. Really beautiful scenes with the Mongolian Titan and the Nemectosaurs migrating through the canyons of the Gobi in order to get to this lush kind of river floodplain, whatever we're calling it. But I guess I'm just wondering, how often do we think sauropods did this? And let's just say that they didn't do a giant migration through some type of Gobi desert. How much food could they eat in one area before they completely decimated an area? So I think, if I'm looking at it this way, there were sauropods that did big, huge, vast migrations. Now, we could also probably include in some of these migrations, the need to lay eggs. We saw that with the isosaurs in India, laying the eggs in the kind of the rim or the crater of the volcano to kind of incubate the eggs. So a lot of migrations were made. I guess we're not always going to know what the reasons were, but if we're comparing it to modern day elephants, big animals like that, looks like they also migrate, and it can be daily up to 30 miles. So, again, I'm thinking that, think about what an elephant needs per day to sustain itself. 300 to 600 pounds of food. It's just insane when you think about that. Now you scale that up to a massive sauropod, you're talking maybe several thousand pounds of food a day. It's just really hard to fathom that any type of environment, even a lush environment, could sustain that over a period of time. So I'm thinking that sauropods were always on the move. They're just munching and eating and kind of farting away, and they're just always on the move looking for that next lush or green patch of vegetation. And then probably again would circle back. Again, I did do some research on this, and in asking around, it seems to be that it doesn't seem like a lot of people believe that sauropods would have had an idea about not eating an area down to just nothing, just they're just munching and just kind of munching mindlessly. Like there's no concept of, well, we shouldn't clear cut this area down to nothing, then there'll be nothing when we come back. So they're always constantly on the move. So if I'm envisioning a sauropod, I'm envisioning them staying in an area for a while. Once it gets down, once the vegetation is trimmed down, moving on. Moving on if there's a drought, if things are dry. There's also evidence of sauropods migrating from lowlands to highlands, and I think even from highlands down to lowlands. All sorts of theories on this. I guess I envision them as migrating animals, and I'm curious what you all think when we think about sauropods. Now, I'm not necessarily mentioning which sauropod or what size, or is it during the Jurassic or the Cretaceous? I'm just kind of talking about sauropods in general. What are our images of them. Again, if we compare them to elephants, we can kind of picture an animal that's constantly on the move. And, this constantly on the move lifestyle does make sense when you think about just how big sauropods were. I mean, even small sauropods, let's face it, were as big as the biggest of elephants today. So the smallest sauropod, some of the smallest ones, 10, 11 tons in weight, would have been among the biggest of elephants today. So picture a herd of any type of sauropod. They seem like they're always going to have to be on the move. Now, when they're on the move, what's following them? What's hunting them? That's a topic for another video. But love to hear your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts on sauropods just constantly, always being on the move just because of the sheer density and the sheer amount of food that they needed to eat in order to sustain their great sizes? Love to hear your thoughts down in the comments section down below. And as always, thank you greatly for the support of this channel. Take care.